In the last 5 months alone, more than 650,000 Rohingya refugees have fled Myanmar for neighboring Bangladesh. The Rohingya, a Muslim minority, have faced a systematic campaign of attacks, rapes, murders, and the burning of their villages at the hands of the Myanmar military. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has said the crisis appears to be a textbook example of ethnic cleansing and should be investigated as a genocide. For those who manage to survive, there's a meager existence in a crowded refugee camp where they rely on international aid to salvage what is left of their lives. And as you'll see in this report from Special Correspondent Martin Seemungal, the healing process has only just begun. A warning, the images and accounts in this story may be disturbing to some viewers.
The scale of the crisis is overwhelming. A city of huts built by Rohingya refugees in just 3 months, carved out of the forests of Bangladesh along the Myanmar border. They fled quickly, carrying little, driven by attacks on their home villages inside Myanmar. They came by the thousands, day after day, week after week, to this sprawling refugee camp. Now, over 500,000 Rohingya are here. They live with overcrowding. Many rely on food handouts, struggling to stay healthy, living with terrible memories.
I'm still afraid. I'm afraid they will come across the border and attack us.
Halima says her husband and 2 children were shot and killed by the Myanmar army. She managed to escape with her remaining children.
I have no more tears left to cry. I am just trying to survive every day.
There are stories like that in virtually every hut in the camp. The sudden massive influx of Rohingya was met by a huge relief operation focusing on the basics: shelter, food, water, medicine, the physical needs. And lately, more and more emphasis on mental health to address the enormous psychological impact on the Rohingya refugees. Mahmouda is a psychologist with UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency. She has been counseling the refugees since the beginning. This 16-year-old did not want her identity revealed, but she told her story to Mahmouda. She says government soldiers attacked her village and killed her mother with a machete. She says the soldiers caught her and took her away. She says she was raped.
They try to normally do many things like self-blaming and guilt and shame. We just try to help them in this way, just so that they can realize actually it's not their fault.
Initially, Mahmouda was the only UNHCR psychologist here, but she is building a team, training women like Shumi.
As a psychologist, we try to build a relationship with the person, because the blame is not her.
Peter Fentefogel is UNHCR's senior mental health officer, and he says more people like Mahmouda are needed because it's important to deal with the Rohingya in their own language, in terms they understand.
Much of the language of psychology is not understood by refugees. We need to bring it down to simple things. So like the word of depression, the word for depression, for example, or the word for PTSD doesn't exist as such in the Rohingya language.
Fentefogel says severe post-traumatic stress disorder is prevalent given what the refugees endured. These are the people who are easily frightened and often unable to function at all. Rashida's scars are seen, slash wounds on her throat and neck, and unseen, the memory of the attack by Myanmar soldiers. She also saw both her children murdered.
My 2-year-old was thrown into the river and drowned. My infant was thrown and smashed on the ground.
Rashida spends most of her time inside her hut and has difficulty doing the simplest tasks.
Some people are not able to go on with their lives because they keep being haunted by the events that happened to them in the past, and they keep being stressed. The stress is still in their body.
Momtaj and her daughter Rotzia also endured a terrible ordeal. The burns on Momtaj's face are still painful weeks after the attack. It began with a raid on their village of Tulatoli. She says the soldiers killed her husband and son, then came for her. Another story of rape. They seem countless here. Mother and daughter are inseparable.
I saw the soldiers killed my father and were attacking my mother. I screamed. The soldiers beat me on my head, and then I can't remember anything.
Momtaj says the soldiers locked them in the warehouse with other women and children and set it on fire. She says they escaped when one of the walls collapsed. That's how she suffered the burns.
I was very afraid, but my mother was with me.
Everyone is emotionally affected to some extent by what happened. But that's different from saying everyone is traumatized. Why? Because the actions that you take are different. If I say someone is traumatized, my action will be to find a trauma therapy or something. If I say a person is grieving, what I will do is I will facilitate him in the grief process, in his bereavement.
Health officials here say Rashida would likely benefit from specialized trauma counseling, and she says she would welcome that.
If a psychologist could come and help, I would be happy because I have to live with this every day.
Psychologists here say Momtaj and Rotzia are ideal candidates for group therapy. Mahmouda regularly conducts sessions like this, mostly with women. They can talk among people with shared experiences, with a counselor to listen. Group therapy, mental health services in general, are not something they had access to in Myanmar.
They can sleep here without fear. So it is the very important thing, because in Myanmar they couldn't sleep well in night. They were all time in a torture and in pressure. So it is horrible for the women and ladies. Now they have safe life.
Hasina says she often feels tense and anxious, but she says the sessions help.
When we speak to the counselors, we feel happy because nobody else asks.
There are other ways UNHCR and the other agencies are providing psychological support, ways you wouldn't expect, like helping refugees help themselves. Supplying bamboo and blankets to let them go and build their own huts is one way.
If you build your own place, it becomes your own space. And it is a sense of belonging that you get back.
There are also specific initiatives to address children's needs. It is estimated over half the camp population is made up of children, many of whom have witnessed the same horrors as the adults. The relief agency Save the Children has built a number of what it calls child-friendly spaces. These centers are usually managed by refugees themselves.
We're providing that basic level of routine, normality, stability, and then through that we identify children who are more distressed or who are showing signs that they need to be referred for more specialised support.
These centers are a glimpse of what can be achieved. But much more is needed amid all the hardship and pain in the camps.